Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Your Town Matters. I'm joined today by the Mayor of the Town of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. Thanks for being here today, Brad.
I'm excited to be back. Last one of the year.
Last one of the year, so this is kind of like our year in review, perhaps.
Won't get it all in one show, though.
And we do have a big, busy 2023 with amalgamation actually starting. All this that we've been waiting for what feels like a year. We've known it's been on the horizon. We just had the municipal elections, and we have 3 new councillors being added. So Annette Harland and Mark Bennett in Shamcook and Daryl Weir in Bayside. How will things change for council with the addition of 3 new councillors?
It will be a change, that's for sure. So right now we have 6 councillors plus a mayor. I vote in the case of a tie. First of all, if you have 9 councillors, there shouldn't be a tie. So I don't get to vote anymore, which I'm okay with. At the end of the day, the mayor is kind of the, you could say, almost the chair of the meeting, and I've got enough confidence in the existing council that I have, and I trust that the people of Shamcook and Bayside represented the people that speak for them the best, so I'm not overly concerned for that. But the council table is going to be a lot bigger when you have 9 councillors. If everyone spoke 3 minutes on something, one motion alone could be 27 minutes of debate, so that'll be a change. But the community itself is changing as well. So the town of St. Andrews is increasing its population almost 50%, geographically even more because those are more spacious areas, and we're incorporating some new assets. We got the Bayside Community Hall, will technically be owned by the town of St. Andrews, but also there's some important you could say infrastructure like the Bayside Port, Shamcook Lake. There's a lot of things that are being incorporated within town limits that we're going to want to do our best to help either partner or facilitate.
And you're expecting with these additions that you will have more work to do, obviously maybe longer council meetings or more council meetings?
Yeah, there's no way part of democracy is everyone has a voice. When you add more voices, meetings just take longer. If you've ever been on a board, the ones with bigger boards, they take longer to kind of come up with decisions than the smaller. I anticipate that to happen. We will review our procedural bylaw to see if there's any way that we can make the meetings any quicker, but this council's been pretty good on making decisions. Like we usually give staff clear direction. I felt on the last council we talked a lot and then didn't necessarily make a decision, but with 9 people it'll be definitely a challenge, but I'm looking forward to it because, to your point, we've been talking about it. I know I was talking about it before I was even mayor, and I've been mayor for over a year and a half, so we've been talking about this 2.5 years. So to finally January 1st see it actually transition from the province making all the decisions to some municipal decisions with these 9 new councillors, it's going to be a challenge at times. I know that it's not always going to be rainbows, but I'm confident everyone's respectful of each other in the process, that I think that we'll be working together quite quickly.
St. Andrews is obviously different from our neighbors in Eastern Charlotte and St. Stephen that have elected full new councils. Have there been introductions now that there's 3 joining? How is that different than, for instance, St. Stephen and Eastern Charlotte?
Well, the concern that you have is you don't want it to feel like 6 councillors and 3 councillors. You want everybody to kind of blend together. So that's going to be a challenge that we have from the get-go. So December 15th, they're being sworn in. So either coming up, or if you're watching this later, it just happened. But after that, in the new year, we actually plan to have a facilitated session where the new councillors learn everything kind of Council 101, whether it be how the meetings run, to how debates run, to what are the different acts, everything you can imagine about being a councillor. And we're going to bring in the afternoon the existing 6 councillors, and we're going to, from kind of day one, hopefully start working together. But the real thing is you don't want it to be that 3 new councillor feel versus 6 is we're all together. It's 9 plus myself. So the quicker that we can all be a team, I think the more effective that all councillors will be.
Now, I know one of the big concerns, it's great, I'm sure, for former LSDs to have representation, but one of the big concerns was, will taxes go up if you're in Shamcook or Bayside? And that's been a huge discussion point leading up to the election. I think everyone running brought it up too. Yeah. What is the answer? I know we've talked about this.
Yeah, and I guess I was a little bit vocal. You and I have talked briefly about it in the past on the news for CHCO. The truth is based on what is being cascaded by the province of New Brunswick, the LSD of Shamcook Bayside will see their taxes go up. The recommendation from the facilitator to the province right now, which the Minister of Local Government has to approve, is that your taxes will almost go up 5 cents per 100 assessed. It's just under that, but the maximum it could have gone up in 1 year is 5 cents. And the plan that we have before us means that it will happen for the following 3 years as well. So 4 years of 5 cent increases roughly is what the current plan of the province is. It was more before, but they changed the formula where those increases that I've spoke about in the past, now they're only paying 75% of them. I have asked why 75%. I have not got an answer to why that calculation happened. So I can't give an answer on that, but based on the current projections that I have before us and what I'm seeing cascaded to the Department of Local Government is taxes will indeed go up in Shamcook Bayside. And the council of the town of St. Andrews, as I've been very vocal about, hasn't had a voice at that table either way. We did have a meeting with a facilitator with representatives from the LSDs, and even the representatives from the LSDs didn't have a voice either.
So, and this is meant for Shamcook and Bayside to pay a portion of things like the CAO salary, this WC O'Neill Arena, which we're sitting in right now.
Yeah, there's basically a list of services that only the existing town of St. Andrews, so the traditional St. Andrews, they only pay for that, but there's a list of things that the entire entity will have to pay for now. And how they did is they just looked at the assessment values of both, and the assessment value of Shamcook Bayside is about 31% compared to St. Andrews, so they were going to pay 31% of those costs. It was higher originally, now they only have to pay 75% of that 31%. Again, don't know why, but the reality is if you're paying for services that you never paid for before, your taxes are going to go up.
And I know it's hard to discuss this before it's even happened, but we haven't had the chance to see how it works yet. Maybe Chris Spear will find his time is divided a different way. So could this be something that could be up for rediscussion?
It definitely is going to be up for, not for next year because the mill rates are set, but for the following year. I mentioned that it could be it's part of a 4-year plan to do the increase right now by the province. Council will have to debate that. It's going to be tough because the other thing is from what I understand is probably all the other areas around are paying 100%. We're paying 75%. I don't know why. I'm told it's not because I was vocal, but when everywhere else in the province is following this model, there's going to be residents of St. Andrews saying you should follow the model everyone else says. Everyone should have to pay. So I hope that council, we don't really have to set the 2024 budget until the end of 2023. I'm really hoping in the first few months we can get comfortable working with each other, because that's going to be a conversation that has very different opinions, and that's okay. But I think before we get comfortable working with each other and working as a team, I think it'll only make that debate healthier and more respectful.
Anyone who's either come to a town council meeting lately or watched one on TV or on Facebook has seen it's set up already for the incoming 3 councillors. I'm wondering how current council feels or how they've been preparing for this addition and how things will change for them on the job.
Council overall, they've been part of the process with me. I definitely, when the facilitator met and explained the tax changes, and before I got a little bit vocal about it, the councillors that attended that meeting were all in support of me being vocal for the LSDs. They do look at it very similar to me. Those are our neighbors. I've always considered people from Shamcook Bayside part of St. Andrews. Grew up playing on sports teams. I didn't care if someone was from Shamcook Bayside. We were all, whether it be Sir James Dunn Academy or St. Andrews, we were all together on one team, and I've kind of had that mentality from then. And I think everyone's going into it with an open mind. We realize that not everything's perfect. But what's been done's been done. There's no going back now, so we need to make the most of this. And to drag our feet and not work together is just going to make the process harder. So, but it really is. It is about putting your thoughts in your comments and how you react to putting yourself in your neighbor's shoes. People that live in Bayside Shamcook have lived there for different reasons, but some people are there because it's a different way of life. It is lower tax. There isn't as many bylaws, and we have to be respectful of that and find a way for common ground, because there is differences, but I'm really optimistic that somewhere it'll all level out. We'll find a common ground where everyone can live with, because the reality is no matter what, someone's going to think that this shouldn't happen, and that happens often in municipal politics.
I'm sure it was definitely strange for New Brunswickers to go to the polls just a year and a half after either electing a council or watching in a community that was having one. I'm wondering, does that mean it starts 4 years for everyone that's joining now?
It does. I actually asked town staff for some confirmation of when the end date is, but my understanding is that this is for our current council, that the 6 individuals plus myself, this is a 5-year mandate now. But if you look, it's been a year and a half. So does that mean we've got? I was told it was going to be 5 years. Does that mean we only have 3.5 left, or are we going to have a 4-year left starting January 1st? I will say that doing an election January 1st is not a very strategic time in municipal politics, because it's right in the middle of the budget setting process. So the old date that we had it, if you look at kind of in the spring, it makes the most sense with the calendar that we have before us. But some things always aren't as smooth as we think, and maybe every 4 years there could be a little bit of a disrupt with an election at this time of year. So I don't know when the next election is, but I am concerned over the date with the timing of budgeting.
With these job changes, with a larger workload, more responsibilities around the province, we're seeing pay raises for different councils. I know that we're filming this December 12th, so tonight there is a public hearing of objections to the proposed pay raises for council and the mayor. Can you tell people who might not be aware, though, where we're at right now with it? Yeah,
so when it comes to remuneration, the province of New Brunswick has led the process across the province. They've looked at council with increased population, but also increased responsibility of these new services that are being essentially downloaded from provincial government to municipal governments. And the province has made a decision to significantly raise the compensation from councils. And I think it's no secret that the wages or remuneration of councils past it was kind of a glorified maybe volunteer position. You're certainly not doing it for the money, because you'd be well below the poverty line. But the increases are quite significant. So they've done it for over 50 of the communities already. The town of St. Andrews requested that they do it for us as well. The response that we got back on both requests is that you have to do it for yourself because your council's still in power. I find that kind of a little bit ironic, because when it came to budget setting, it felt like there was a one Band-Aid fits all solution. And when it comes to remuneration, it's not. It's just not consistent. And what it's done is it's forcing the council in the town of St. Andrews to effectively look at their own salary to some degree, which isn't right. But in the same sense, it's not right that the councillors that work very hard for this town are now making about 40% what all the other councillors in this province make, including our neighbours in St. Stephen, St. George, and communities comparable across the province. So the staff did make a presentation on the recommendations to put us more in line. It's a significant increase. So that's going to go out to the hearing of objections tonight. We're looking to hear from the public. I'm sure some people will say, well, you should be consistent with the rest of the province. But there's going to be some people that said, well, you signed up to do this. Even though it's changed, they don't maybe see it that way. They probably will think that it's a little bit rich of an increase. So where it nets out with council, sometimes we put things out to hearing objections to hear from the public, and that's what council is doing in this particular case. But myself, I can just talk about whatever we hear tonight. I actually, from the recommendation from the rest of the province, is I'm actually going to make a recommendation to lower that a little bit. I think it's still over-indexed, and at the end of the day, I have a full-time job. This is a part-time thing that I do on the side, and I don't take for the tax dollars lightly that the cost of everything's going up. There's a lot of other costs that are being incurred because of municipal reform, and eventually all these costs add up more to cost the taxpayer more, so we've got to be conscious of that as well.
And a lot has changed since this is a year in review. In the time we're living in than it would have been even 10 and especially 20 years ago. I look to social media, I look how it's changed my own job. I imagine it has that effect on council. I know from having Don Darling as a guest in our studio here that social media led to him also not wanting to run again because it adds another layer to your job. You're never really off duty. You wake up responding. It's a lot harder to write an email in a weird way. I think at one point we thought emails were this easy rather than sending a letter, but now there can just be comments. That must factor in a little bit to people's decisions whether they want to be on council or not.
I think to be honest, I think social media would probably discourage a lot of people, and it's good that everybody has a voice, but traditionally if you wanted to have a voice, you'd show up at a council meeting and or write a letter to say your thoughts. Now you can just make a quick witted comment, and sometimes people behind keyboards don't realize that they're actually talking about another human being, and they can be quite harsh. Been fortunate where it's been very minimal experience that way, but what's really changed is it's very common to get a few dozens Facebook messages, because that's what people just do. It's quick, it's easy. But people also expect you to be able to respond the day of now. Like the time frame, when you talk about 20 years ago, if you got a message back in a week, you'd be like, that was quick. But now people expect it within an hour, and they don't care if it's a Tuesday night at 10 p.m. and they don't care if it's a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. So I do think it discourages a lot of people because you're always in the spotlight. At any given time, anybody is free to criticize you that way. And the reality is, I think when people see things in writing, even though it's someone's opinion, they kind of take it for almost its word, because there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. And there's a lot of people that don't necessarily follow along on an issue, but they weigh in without having all the facts, and that can be tough as well. But yeah, it's a concern as well. But I think for this council, the real reason they're looking after the remuneration is they just want to be consistent with the rest of the province, and they hope that it attracts good candidates moving forward. But right now, for example, if I talk about myself, I'm scheduled to make less money as mayor of this community with all of its responsibilities than almost all councillors across the entire province. So something does have to change. The question is at what level and how do you go about it? And I'm sure we're going to hear from at least one member of the community tonight, if not more. We hope we do, but we'll see.
Another issue that has been, I don't want to say polarizing or controversial, but has brought in many different points of views has been housing developments. St. Andrews has been proactive in trying to find solutions to a housing crisis that is worldwide. As it is a year in review, can we talk a little bit about where we're at with a few of the projects? Compass, I'm thinking in particular, as well as Bridle Path that was scheduled for the lot on Water Street. Where are we with those projects? Yeah,
so Compass Housing, I did declare a conflict of interest just because it is adjacent to my parents' home. But I can comment on where it is. Right now, it did go through second reading. So it's scheduled to go through third reading. But when it goes through third reading, typically you have a development agreement at the same time. So you approve the development agreement at the same time as third reading. And that is before council. I believe the document's finished. So council will review that, and then if they like it, they will approve the development agreement in a public meeting, and then potentially go to third reading. That gets into all the details over things like water drainage, because that was one of the concerns I believe they heard at the hearing of objections. There is that detention pond in behind. I'm assuming it'll run through there, but again, I don't have the development agreement before me right now. But that'll be the I guess you say dotting the I's, cross the T's, giving the detail that people want to know. So we're at that stage where they would have to give a look at that to approve it. And then Bridle Path, to switch the gears to the downtown development known as the former HMS lot. Council heard from the public. That's what a hearing of objections is for. And what we heard from a number of people in the community, a lot of neighbors, but not just neighbors, people throughout the historic town plat and beyond, that a lot of people had some real concerns over that project. So we definitely got a lot of legitimate concerns, and we also got, to be honest, some red herrings of people, necessarily trying to stop it, spreading maybe even some fake news. But at the end of the day, what council really weighed in at is this project required 6 variances from our bylaws. It required 2 exemptions from our secondary municipal plan. And there's a gentleman that used to be a mayor of this community, used to be the chair of the planning advisory committee. I looked up to him, and he taught me a lot. And one of the things that he told me that is if something requires more than 2 or 3 variances, it probably doesn't fit the design and look and feel of your community. It shouldn't even be considered, because if you're got 6 in this case and 2 from the secondary plan, it really doesn't fall within the plan of this community. So ultimately, council did feel that way as well. It was just probably a little bit. I think Councillor Gumashell said a tad too large or something, but. The reality is we just encourage the developer to submit another plan that falls better within the zoning guidelines of the town of St. Andrews and the secondary municipal plan. We haven't heard back yet, but that was council's decision. And I think that does line up with the things that I've always said since I even started running and when I've been on the show. As I said, we are pro-development here at St. Andrews, but with that being said, we are respectful of our heritage, of the look and feel of our community. And when we are developing, we want to do it in a way that is respectful to the look and feel of our community. So ultimately, in this case, council said that they felt that this one fell outside of it with the current plan.
It sounds like a pearl of Chris Fleming wisdom.
Yeah, that's exactly where it came from. Is I no question about it. I respected Chris Fleming's opinion, and a young guy like me getting involved in municipal politics could learn a lot from a guy like him, and I was very fortunate to have that opportunity.
It's been a busy year. When you look back on 2022, what are the highlights for you as mayor? What are you most proud of?
I'm really proud at this council on the fact that they've kind of did what they said they were going to do to get in. I know, back to housing, I know, the reality of what I've learned is nobody really wants multiple residential housing beside them. We've got a lot of objection from neighbors, but the truth is they said they were going to make impacts on housing, and they are delivering on that promise, and they've done it very quickly. Really, if you look at how many proposals are currently being built actually now, but how many are still before us, there is new units coming to this community, and they're coming very soon. The reality is you want to build yesterday. They do take a year or two to at least get off the ground and another year to build, but they are going to be delivering on that, so I'm very proud of them. If you look at the ladder truck, that was something that they identified through strategic planning. That should be in St. Andrews, expected around January of 2024. It takes quite a while to get a designed ladder truck for the community, but their priorities that they said they're going to focus on, they have. Now they're kind of transitioning to the asset management file. Not that they weren't looking at it, but we've kind of got our big ticketed items that they focused on. They've kind of circled the calendar for when they want them. We have to focus now on the wharf because there is external funding there. And trails because there's external funding there. But other than that, it's about sticking to the plan. Now municipal reform is going to take them in a direction they never necessarily thought their council experience was necessarily going to go. But to redo every bylaw, which is going to be required as part of municipal reform, literally almost every single bylaw. And it could be something as simple as saying the words of Shamcook Bayside do not apply to this bylaw, but they all have to be updated to be very clear and concise. All those require 3 readings and a hearing of objection, so you can imagine how much administration time all these changes are going to take. I think that's going to eat up a lot of their time, unfortunately, for the next few years, but they got to be proud of the progress they've made already. And I'd say that's really the highlight. I will say that it's been an absolute pleasure working with this council. I find that everybody is respectful of each other's opinion, even if it's different. And to be honest, in my municipal young experience, I've had a little bit. It's certainly the most enjoyable and respectful workplace that I've had.
And looking ahead to 2023, you mentioned some upcoming challenges, but what are you looking most forward to about this year, accomplishing and getting on your radar?
I think the 2023, the focus has got to be on, again, those 3 councillors joining our 6, and us as Shamcook Bayside and St. Andrews finding a way to work together and, again, be respectful and make it work. I think if at the end of 2023 all we had is that councils working together as a whole for the residents of this community, I think that would be a major win, because this is arguably the biggest change in municipal government in decades, right? In my lifetime, for sure. It's not going to be a small change. But I look around other communities. You've got St. George and Blacks Harbor combining together. You've got St. Stephen with a bigger rural area joining. I think there's 4 councillors from the old St. Stephen, 4 from the LSDs. We have challenges, but so do our neighbors. And I guess if you get the right people on the bus, you might not know where the bus is heading, but you'll have a good trip, right? So I'm really hoping that with council that it works out this way, but we'll wait and see. But that's really in 2023 what we're looking forward to the most. But we have big projects ahead as well.
And then 4 years down the road, would it necessarily be 9 councillors again, or could you revisit that and maybe?
That's a really good question. So it can be revisited. So really, once January 1st comes, we could probably do pretty much anything we want. We can't necessarily separate again, but like within reason, you certainly can. I think it would be worth a debate to say, do you go back to 6 councillors where you might have 4 from the current to St. Andrews and then 1 from each ward? So that way, right now you've got 6 and 3, so that's about 50%. 4 and 2 is 50%. And then the mayor comes back into play, and the mayor could live in Shamcook Bayside as well. But they'll have the conversation. They may say 9's the perfect number, so that'll be council's decision. But it is a conversation that we will have to have prior to the end of the election cycle or the term.
So the first time that we will see all 9 councillors and you in the council chamber will be right away in January. Is that the? It
will be. The meeting will be a week back because of the way the holidays fall. But I think it's the first Saturday of the new year. We're having that orientation session for new councillors, and then we'll be hitting the ground running the following week. So we're not wasting any time. In particular, I met with Annette Hardland, and she is really excited. And I hope that everybody shares that. Mark certainly has reached out; he's excited as well. So it'll be good to have them at the table, and I'm excited.
I'm really looking forward to following it, and I would like to point out that you are the most frequent guest of CHCO for 2022. I wish I had an award to give you.
Well, it could be because I also live about a 2-minute drive away from the studio too, right? So.
But I can't thank you enough. I think it's so important for voters, for residents to hear from their mayor, and you're always willing to come sit down and share your insights and perspective and give us more background on different topics. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. But CHCO is such an important part of our community too, not just for messaging, just actively involved. We just got done Santa's Helpers here, and the amount of time that you and especially Patrick put into making that happen. This community is so blessed to have you in our backyard, and anytime, anything I can do for CHCO, I'd be happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much, and happy holidays, Brad.
You too.
My guest today has been Brad Henderson, Mayor of the town of St. Andrews. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Your Town Matters.